into the medical management of apnea of prematurity. Now, in medical management, we use a common group of drug known as methylxanthines. Now, what is the problem in apnea? That the baby has a decreased respiratory drive. Why is that so? We already know it is because of the depressed response of the chemoreceptors and the respiratory centers present in your pons and your medulla, right? So now what do we have to do? We have to formulate, or we have to give such a drug that will go and increase your respiratory drive. Now we have a group of receptors in our body known as the adenosine receptors, as we can see here. Now these adenosine receptors, they normally decrease the respiratory drive in your body. Now if we give a drug which acts against these receptors, then would we be able to increase the respiratory drive? Absolutely yes. So that's why we go with the class of drugs known as methylxanthines. Under methylxanthines, the most commonly used drug is theophylline and caffeine citrate, among which caffeine citrate is the best. Why is that so? Because it has a wider therapeutic window, which means it is generally safer. It has decreased and very less side effects, and it does not need frequent monitoring. Therefore, it is more easier to administrate and follow up. So, what is the dose that we start on the baby? In case of caffeine, we give 20 mg per kg per day, which is a loading dose, that is the first dose. Then we taper it down slowly to either 5 to 10 mg per kg per day. Now, a very important point to remember in case of caffeine citrate is that it has a T half of around 100 hours, that is 4 to 5 days. Now what does this mean? Which means we have to discontinue caffeine citrate at least 5 days before the discharge of the baby. Why is that so? Now let's consider you discharge the baby. The baby is on caffeine citrate, and we discharge the baby. Okay. Now the baby goes to home, and then the caffeine citrate will still be in the blood, will still be in the body of the baby, and therefore the baby won't have any apneic episodes. But the effect would start weaning off only after 5 days, and maybe the apnea wouldn't even have resolved. Now the parents and the baby would again come to the clinic to you with the same complaint of apnea. So therefore we'll stop the drug 5 days before we discharge, and we will monitor if there is any recurrent apnea. In case there is any recurrent episodes, then we can look for the next course of treatment. Okay, so this is very important, which most students miss.